But I want it now!
Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. As the title suggests, I'm going to be talking about my pitch for a Daredevil video game. Now, I have already done this type of video before, but the quality and some of my ideas weren't the greatest, and I actually wanted to reapproach it, especially with the new Daredevil Born Again series coming out on Disney Plus in the next couple days, because I am recording this near the end of February. And honestly, there has been some canceled Daredevil game projects and other various stuff, but I personally think a Daredevil video game would be amazing, especially because a lot of people have talked about their ideas for a game. I actually wanted to throw my hat in the ring again and talk about my ideas. Now, when it comes to Daredevil, considering his power set, he's actually an interesting character because his video games haven't been the best, especially when it comes to his powers, and they've really been afraid to really touch this character and give him his own video game. And that's surprising considering he's a martial artist, he has various amounts of abilities, and also he's a dark, gritty character, very similar to Batman, but with some interesting fun stuff that's very Spider-Man-esque. And the only other Daredevil game that really captured the spirit, the gameplay, and the character of Daredevil was the canceled Daredevil A Man Without Fear video game, which was the core aspect of what I wanted from a Daredevil video game experience. And like how Insomniac did Marvel's Spider-Man, I wanted to use this game as a founding basis for how I would improve the formula and make a Daredevil video game, especially when it comes to the overall gameplay experience, when it comes to the combat, traversal, characters, map, enemies, and weapons. But speaking of, let's actually start with gameplay and combat. Getting into a Marvel's Daredevil video game, now, I want this game to have some elements from Marvel's Spider-Man and also elements from the Arkham series and the Netflix series, where it can be open world and also have those brutal gameplay moments with iconic characters, especially when it comes to the most crucial mechanic, Daredevil's super hearing. Now, Daredevil's hearing has always been a crucial part of his character, helping him see when he really can't. I don't want this mechanic to be dumbed down to be very similar to the listening or detective vision from the Arkham series. I want this to be integrated more into the overall gameplay experience, because Daredevil can hear almost anything. That's how he sees the world. But I don't want this game to be just seeing odd shapes and stuff like that, but I want his hearing to be a crucial part of the overall combat experience any more than the other aspects of gameplay. They're very similar to Spider-Man's Spidey sense. Basically, his hearing actually helps you out in combat. It's like echolocation, but the only difference is it actually is more in line with the Netflix series, where some enemies you actually have to learn how to track their movements in combat, where the Daredevil in that show had to learn to track from swords to their breath, and that's something pretty distinct with his hearing, and I want something like that integrated into the gameplay, not just for stealth and having a special little sense, very similar to the Daredevil A Man Without Fear game, where sometimes you're tracking enemies' heartbeats, but you can also radar in and kind of use an echolocation to go even further, very similar to how Arkham Knight's stealth, where there's enemies that you can't actually detect with your detective vision. I want something very similar where it's integrated into your stealth, but also your combat, because Daredevil's hearing is like a mixture of two different elements, Spider-Man's Spidey sense and Batman's detective vision. And I want the hearing to be twofold, where there is a bit of a focus mode where you can hear stuff and you can use it in stealth, very similar to a radar, but also your hearing can be used in combat, highlighting enemies and also trying to track them, so certain things you can't actually track. So it kind of makes it kind of a blind spot, no pun intended, for Daredevil, so you can't actually counter certain things and you can't move to an enemy because you don't know where they actually are. Where the enemies are highlighted with sound waves very subtly, even if you're not in focus mode. So this way you can tell where they are, even if highlighted you can't actually see them, so it kind of has that unique integration with the hearing mechanic into combat. But also, you would have it as a part of your stealth in some aspects. Now, I did struggle with how you could implement it into stealth as well, because I didn't want this to be a simple button press like the detective vision. I wanted it to be a multifaceted part of each aspect of your gameplay. So in stealth, I kind of thought of it being like a mixture of a radar pulse scan, very similar to Cole's electricity pulse in Infamous 1 and Infamous 2, where you could see all the electricity in the area and have it be highlighted. It would be very similar to that. As for other aspects of gameplay, you would have your upgrade menu where you could upgrade your moveset, like your agility, your combat, and other various stuff, and you also would have the collectibles that you can find in the open world, and various crimes. When it comes to the collectibles, you could find boxing motif, comics, and other various stuff, but I really couldn't come up with too many ideas. Maybe ninja scrolls, but that's really about it. As for other aspects of gameplay, you have your gadgets and weapons, so let's actually get into those now, because it's going to be a big part of combat. Now, getting into gadgets and weaponry, I'm fully aware that Daredevil doesn't really use too many gadgets compared to Batman and Spider-Man. Daredevil as a character does use his billy clubs as his main source of a gadget, and I want to keep it within that in a more ninja format. Now, obviously taking games like Ghost of Tsushima for inspiration, because he's not going to be like Batman and have a giant gadget wheel. I want it to be more practical than that. I want the gadget system to be very similar to a weapon system, similar to how Devil May Cry 5 handles Dante's weapon slots, and also Ninja Gaiden handles the weapon system. I kind of want it to be very similar when it comes to the gadgets. Very similar to Ninja Gaiden 2, you have 3 different slots: your long range stuff, your stealth stuff, and also your melee weapons, which you can cycle between given any particular situation. I wanted to take a lot of influence from Ghost of Tsushima's system to some extent, where you could have any particular weapon or gadget equipped, but you have to cycle between them through different menus at any given time. As for your gadgets, obviously you do have your stealth stuff like smoke grenades and other various things, maybe some ninja stars and firecrackers, but because of Daredevil's sound-based weakness, because of his hearing being so enhanced, I actually wanted to kind of dial that idea back. Obviously, your billy clubs will be your most versatile tool, so it will be classified as a gadget very similar to Nightwing's Astroma sticks. And the billy clubs are very good for precise, close quarters combat. Obviously, they can be used for much more, like throwing them and other various stuff, just like in the comics. The throwing can be kind of weird and wonky, but them being able to redirect off of objects to knock enemies in the head obviously would be very fun. And because they're in baton mode, there would be other functions to make them very similar to the ones we have in the overall comics, making it extremely fun to use in your close quarters combat. And you can obviously throw it at an enemy and miss and have it redirect off of objects and still hit that enemy, just like Captain America's shield. It also mixes your long range and close range together, very similar to the batarangs to some extent. Also, you can change the mode of it where it's wired, and you can use different functions of that to get at enemies. While baton mode is your standard mode for your billy club, other modes for your billy club can be just as versatile in your combat style as baton mode, where baton mode is more precise. The wired mode is a little bit more quicker, and also you can be using it at close range for very precise, very fast movements, very similar to a certain weapon in Ninja Gaiden, while also using it very far away with its wires to pull enemies towards you and other various things. And obviously you can upgrade these so the nunchuck could actually get a blade attached to it and other various stuff. Fire mode actually does have the capability to wrap around different enemies' legs, pull their legs beneath them, and other various stuff. Very similar to an upgraded version of the Batclaw from the Arkham series, mixing that with Spider-Man's webbing. And obviously there is a couple other forms as well. Staff mode, which functions very similar to Robin's bow staff from the Arkham series, and also spear mode. I did think about giving Daredevil some other gadgets as well, being a dart system that's very similar to Ghost of Tsushima's dart system, mixing that with Nightwing's dart system from Arkham City. It would kind of function very similar to the Disruptor from Batman Arkham Knight, but instead of, jamming weapons and stuff like that, it would be targeting different enemies and shooting little darts in their neck very precisely, where they would have different effects. Some of them would get knocked out, and others could see things or hallucinate, or get very sick, or even die. I don't really know. Obviously, I did think about giving him a sword, but I feel like that would be pushing the envelope a little bit when it comes to weaponry, so I kind of dialed that idea back. Fully aware that I did blow past the staff mode. Now, obviously, when it comes to the staff mode, you can combine both versions of the Billy Club and use it as a bow staff. Whacking enemies, working very similar to Robin's bow staff, with some minor tweaks, pulling a little bit from the double-sided lightsaber from Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order. Obviously, there would be some acrobatic moves thrown in there, obviously, that you can do with not just the bow staff, but also with the other weapons to add some air combat, because I do want some acrobatic improvisation thrown in there. Being able to air juggle enemies like in Ninja Gaiden and Devil May Cry would be pretty cool. Obviously, spear mode would be an upgraded version of the bow staff with a longer blade at the end of it and actually being able to do a lot more damage. Now that we have weapons and gadgets out of the way, let's actually get into combat. So this is where the video can be a little bit controversial. Now, when it comes to Daredevil's combat, I want to take a massive influence from the hack and slash genre and make it very similar to Ninja Gaiden. What? I know that sounds weird, but let me explain my vision for the combat system. So when I came up with my ideas for the combat system, I wanted to have 3 crucial pillars. Basically, I wanted to emulate very heavily from the original Daredevil A Man Without Fear video game, but being a more modern version of it. The secondary pillar that I wanted to have is I wanted to pull a lot from the hack and slash genre, more specifically Ninja Gaiden, which I've been talking about throughout this video. And it was my main inspiration throughout this video because I'm deeply familiar with the idea of hack and slashes, especially games like Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, which prioritize your stylish gameplay, but also have deep-rooted strategies and combat to air juggle enemies and also dealing with enemies at the same time. It allows you to be stylish, but also have different strategies for enemies in combat, where Bayonetta, it's about timing and also using your witch dodge and stuff like that. God of War was about weapons, blocking, air juggling, and stuff like that. And Devil May Cry, with each particular character, there was a different strategy to gameplay, and the same could be said for Ninja Gaiden. Third pillar is actually pulling from different sources and different combat systems when it comes to this game, where I am going to be pulling a little bit from Sifu while also pulling a little bit from Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor, and also games like Infamous and also the Arkham series and Marvel Spider-Man. Still do want that style thrown in there, but I do want it to be more in the background where you can tell it's there, but you also have these other systems that are complementing things. Now, I don't want this to be a collage-podge of 3 or multiple different systems that don't work. I want them to be a fusion where they complement one another. I'm very much tired of every combat system starting to feel the same when it comes to superhero games and feeling like Arkham, and I don't want that for Daredevil. I want it to be a fusion of multiple different systems. Now, obviously, with the Ninja Gaiden elements, there is going to be a bit of that when it comes to movement, but it also is going to pull from Devil May Cry when it comes to its dodging system, where it's more about timing and it's more the easier system to learn. Next to the blocking system, which I'll get into just a little bit later, which is going to be pulling from Sifu. The dodging system is going to be eerily very similar to Bayonetta's, but more like Devil May Cry 4 and Devil May Cry 5, inspired when it came to NEER, where it's a little bit about timing. You can do a basic dodge, but if you perfectly press your dodge button, that doesn't guarantee that you're completely not going to get hit by incoming attacks from enemies. So it is an easier system to get out of the way and stuff like that, but if you learn it just a little bit more, there is more under the surface. Just like with the blocking system, it is about timing. Basic dodges can get you out of the way, but you can still get hit in those dodge frames. But a perfect dodge can actually, with its invincibility frames, you can actually dodge and avoid any incoming damage completely. And the dodging system is a lot more easier of a system to learn compared to the blocking system, where both systems are about timing. Obviously, it's going to be a collage-podge of learning how to use your weapons, moving from enemy to enemy, and also it's more of a timing, precision-based system that pulls a lot from Ninja Gaiden, Ghost of Tsushima, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Arkham and Marvel Spider-Man, where there would be a little bit of air juggling and other various stuff as well. As for the blocking system, it does take cues from the dodging system to some extent, where it's more of a risk-reward system to some extent, where it does take cues from Sifu when it comes to its blocking and precision and stuff like that, and also Arkham. The blocking is more risk and reward if you get your timing right, very similar to the Royal Guard style from Devil May Cry. And like Devil May Cry's blocking when it comes to Royal Guard, especially from 5, you can standard block, which could take away your durability, but if you perfectly time it, you can get durability back. And I wanted a very similar system. The only difference is you actually have to be more precise when it comes to your timing if you actually take the time to learn the system, because on higher difficulties, you actually can get punished for using and abusing the dodging system, and if you don't know your blocking system, you're pretty much screwed, which you can block with weapons or your hands, but there is a uniqueness to the timing. A standard block, or just blocking and holding yourself into place, very similar to Ninja Gaiden, sometimes becomes very risky because you can still get hit. But if you perfectly time your blocks, not only do you take no damage, but also sometimes you can get a unique counter. Countering system is very unique because it is tied to your block, very similar to the Royal Release or the throw counter in Arkham Knight. If a perfect block is initiated, it will have a counter, but holding in the attack button, being square, and releasing it multiple times, very similar to Virgil's Judgment Cut mechanic in Devil May Cry 5. Basically, you can do multiple counters at once, very similar to Batman's stealth takedowns or his multiple counters in the Arkham series. The only difference is it's a little bit harder to pull off compared to just pushing triangle when multiple lights pop up on the screen. Counters can be upgraded where an enemy has a weapon. Sometimes you can use that weapon against them and also keep it for an extended amount of time till it breaks, very similar to Arkham Knight. Just like your dodging, it's a bit of risk and reward, and it rewards you learning the system and learning the timing to pull it off very well. Also, it does reward your acrobatic abilities as well, so you can jump on enemies, slide underneath them, and do other various stuff. You do have your switching between your weapons, like your bow staff, and your other various stuff in combat, so you can do air juggles, pull enemies in the air, slam them back down, and other various stuff. But staying in the air is not good either, because sometimes enemies can take you and pull you back down. There is a bit of strategy to combat where you're not staying in the air all the time, because sometimes certain enemies can grab you, pull you back down, or do various other things, or shoot at you in the air and ruin your combos. So there is a mixture of learning how to dodge, learning how to block and counter, and also using your air juggles all at the same time. But hopefully this explains my vision of the overall combat system and what I would do for Daredevil combat system. If you guys disagree or don't like it, that is perfectly fine. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Also, let's actually move on to the overall map and traversal. I'm going to get into the map first, but also, brief little side note, 2 things. I did struggle a lot coming up with a map that would work for the character of Daredevil for the story and traversal, while also moving away from New York as a whole, because we've seen it a bunch in Marvel Spider-Man and other various games, and I feel like giving us a brand new atmosphere and a new world to explore would be very interesting, especially going with the story and other various stuff. Obviously, this wouldn't be Daredevil's new home turf, but still. And secondly, just because the game's combat is hack and slash inspired doesn't mean that it can't be an open world game. I'm fully aware that hack and slashes aren't open world, and the ones that have been are kind of clunky and don't really work with that aesthetic. But this is only taking that inspiration when it comes to the combat. Other things will be going in tandem to make the system still work for the traversal and also the stealth. But I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here. Let's actually get into the map, because I am going to be taking inspiration from my original video, keeping the map set in Tokyo. Originally it was going to be Japan, but I settled on Tokyo just like in the original because I feel that it works very well, and also because of the fact that it is like a different version of New York with bigger buildings, different structures, and different ways to explore, being very similar to an urban jungle, just like how New York was. And personally, I feel like Tokyo goes hand in hand very well with the story as well, and you can actually explore a different region in the Marvel universe. And especially with how it would work with traversal, which I'm going to get into right now. Now, when it comes to the traversal system, I actually wanted to take a couple pages from Infamous, the original Daredevil Man Without Fear game, Jedi Survivor and Assassin's Creed, and also Ninja Gaiden and Marvel Spider-Man and Arkham. I wanted this traversal system to have an air of realism that kind of challenges the player, without it being too complicated, but also being very realistic with how he would actually move. My own idea of a system that kind of prioritizes movement and also parkour versus swinging. So in some ways, the system takes a lot of inspiration from Mirror's Edge, Ninja Gaiden, and also Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order, with some sprinkled in Arkham and Marvel Spider-Man elements thrown in there. The system would be very similar to Catwoman's system from Batman Arkham City, but a more parkour version of it, where with that system it was about gaining speed and occasionally jumping and timing those jumps to get up buildings, and occasionally using your whip to grapple up to higher places. But with this system, it's more of a refined version of that, similar to what they kind of did in Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order, where you can run on the side of buildings, very similar to Marvel Spider-Man. But unlike with Marvel Spider-Man, you wouldn't have a charge jump as Daredevil. You would actually have to either use the fire escapes or actually jump between buildings like Ninja Gaiden. This system would kind of be molded around the idea of parkour, jumping on buildings, sliding down stuff, or even grinding on wires or sliding between them and jumping off of them, and other various stuff. System that prioritizes movement first versus swinging and other various stuff. Now, obviously, you do have the ability to swing, but I wanted to make it more grounded. But I didn't just want it to be kind of like a grapple, very similar to single button press. And I also didn't want it to be completely like Marvel Spider-Man swinging, so I wanted it to be more realistic. And obviously, with his billy clubs, they sometimes have to wrap around stuff, and flat buildings, unless it's embedding itself very good into the wall, I highly doubt that that is possible. Sometimes you can only swing off of certain objects and stuff like that, because of the fact that the billy clubs aren't like Marvel Spider-Man's web swinging. You can't stick them to buildings, and they can't be embedded into a wall, because obviously there is a bit of that pendulum type of swinging system, just like Marvel Spider-Man, and obviously it wouldn't support his weight. Swinging has to operate a little bit differently, so it prioritizes you more running around versus swinging. But obviously there would be a bit of a trick system on the ground when you're doing very stylish parkour, and also when you're in the air when you're swinging. Moving away from the map and traversal, let's actually get into the enemies. Now, obviously, I actually struggled a little bit when it came to the enemies and what I would add, because obviously the Hand are going to be the central villains, or at least the primary force and the antagonists of the game. So hand ninjas and different styles of hand ninjas are kind of mandatory, pulling a little bit from the Arkham series. For other enemies, obviously you have your basic thugs and also the Yakuza, which are a different crime organization, and maybe some other crime organizations as well. And also, pulling a little bit from Batman Arkham Origins, I actually wanted to make the Tokyo Police an enemy type in the game. Very similar to Arkham Origins, there are corrupt police officers, but also there are just genuine police officers that are going after you, just like in the Netflix series, because of you being a vigilante, but also because you're in their country and there are different laws. So I wanted that to kind of play a role with the idea of Daredevil being in a different environment and how things are, especially on the lawyer front, because different laws in different countries. So there is that. Obviously, besides enemies, who are the side characters that are going to be appearing in this game? Obviously, Foggy Nelson and Karen Page are a mainstay, and they would probably play crucial roles, very similar to Miles Morales and MJ. Also, Elektra could be a secondary character that not only could you play as, but also be a mainstay in the story, especially with her complicated relationship with Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, with it being romantic in one moment, and also trying to kill him in another. And obviously, with her connection to the Hand, it would make sense for her to be a mainstay in the overall storyline of this game. As for for villains, obviously you could have Martin Lee making some appearances and also Kingpin as well, but the overall main antagonist or force would be the Hand as the main villain, being the overall force that you have to deal with throughout the story, and it would make the most sense with both characters having a connection to them. As for other villains, because I do want to pull a little bit from Arkham Origins, I actually like the idea of the Hand hiring different assassins to diverge Daredevil's attention and also try to kill him at the same time, so he doesn't actually get in the way. And I actually think that they would actually hire Bullseye. I would be one of the characters that I would really want to see in a Daredevil video game, not just because of the boss fights, but also because of how insane he is, and also because he's Daredevil's ultimate rival, very similar to Batman and the Joker, Wolverine and Sabretooth, and Spider-Man and Green Goblin. I feel like those encounters would really push that insane level, while also showing how skilled he can be, almost like an insane version of Deadshot from the Arkham series. As for other antagonists, I think we could have the Punisher or other characters as well, but I really couldn't come up with too many other villains that you can fight, because really there aren't too many outside of Bullseye, not that I know of. Yeah, this is just my pitch for a Daredevil video game. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. Do you agree, disagree, or actually let me know some of your ideas as well, because I would love to hear them. Also, if you made it towards the end of the video, comment "A devil's work is never done" to let me know, and also the YouTube algorithm know that this has been seen. The bell icon to be notified when I upload, and also let me know your thoughts. And also hit the like button, it really helps out the channel and me. Peace out. Bye-bye.